right, episode three of Soulful Sundays. So last week we talked about grief, right? And in that video I said, hey, I just feel like I want stability and God keeps rocking my boat. I'm with, like, I value stability. I value just like, hey, it being cut and dry, and this is what it is. And I was telling one of my friends that, like, I just want stability and God keeps rocking my boat. So we're gonna talk about that. Probably not the best song to be singing right now, but here we are. So I actually, once again, have not prepared, but what I wanted to do was kind of do this video in the format of sort of how I would do a quiet time when I don't really have anywhere to start, because I want to, for those of you all wanting to be more consistent in your quiet times or want to know how to have a quiet time, I wanted to provide some examples. Usually in my quiet times, I either have like a book that I'm reading through or a Bible plan that I'm doing that is pretty structured. Sometimes I don't, and I just like start by journaling and trying to figure out, hey, where do I go here? And a lot of times when I start journaling and get those emotions out, then I have a pretty good idea of like what kind of scriptures I need to be focusing on. So the title of today's lesson is Soulful Sunday. Let God rock the boat. Okay, trusting God through disruption in your life, essentially. And so if I were to sit down trying to have a quiet time about that, the things that will be on my heart, and these are real, it's just that this is a very disruptive time in my life. God, I feel like there's so much change going on right now, but specifically when I talk about God rocking the boat, I know that there are a couple of passages that are like boat related in the Bible. So literally you could start by going to Google, okay? Going to Google and just starting with a simple search of, like, I know one of the passages was like Peter walking on water or Jesus sleeping on a boat. And so I'm going to literally just type that into Google. Jesus sleeping on the boat. Okay. So when I type that in, the first thing that comes up are some passages on it. Let me just put this up here for y'all to see. Some passages on it, and then some articles. I love Desiring God. I'll figure out how to like make that so y'all can see it. I love Desiring God, so I may check out some articles that come up, but one of the passages that comes up is Matthew 8 verses 23 through 27. Jesus calms the storm. So I'm going to take my Bible and I'm going to Matthew 8. I just miraculously turned there first, but first book of the New Testament. Okay, so I'm going to Matthew 8, and it said verses 23 through 27. So I'm going to read those. Again, we're going to see where this leads us because I haven't looked at these before. So the title of this passage of scripture is Jesus Calms the Storm. It says, then Jesus got into the boat and started across the lake with his disciples. Suddenly, a fierce storm struck the lake, with waves breaking into the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." Jesus responded, "Why are you afraid?" I'm chuckling because this is so applicable to me right now. Jesus responded, "Why are you afraid? You have so little faith." Then he got up and rebuked the winds and waves, and suddenly there was a great calm. The disciples were amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked. "Even the winds and waves obey him." So we see in this passage, Jesus gets in the boat with his disciples. They're clearly about to travel somewhere, and then a storm breaks out, gets a little rocky. Okay. What does it say? The waves were breaking into the boat, literally. And so storms, right? Storms in life, we have them. So if you watched my last video, you know that I talked a lot about grief. I talked a lot about being in a season right now where I don't even know how to explain this season. I wouldn't quite call it a wilderness season yet, but it's just a lot of disruption. Okay. So many things going on that I just don't know how they're going to turn out. I don't know what life is going to look like a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, a year from now. Just my life being really impacted in drastic ways that change a lot for me. And so those are what my storms look like. That's what that rock in the boat looks like for me. And I can respond like these disciples who say, hey, wake up, Jesus. Can't you see that there's don't you know there's a storm going on? Save us. Jesus was straight sleep. Okay. I can feel like that's how God is in my life. Sleep. Okay. You see what's going on, right? Do something, man. And so he responded, why are you afraid? You have so little faith. And these are guys who literally had Jesus on the boat with them. Okay. What else could you want but Jesus to be right there with you, right? And so I can really relate to just that feeling of panic. Of course, not having Jesus right here with me, but just that feeling of panic that's like, hey, wake up, do something. And then Jesus, with the faith that he has, pretty much knowing that everything is going to be okay, he's just like, dude, why wake up? Why are y'all worried? Rebukes the winds and kind of going on about his business, right? And so I think that's a good question to ask. How am I responding like the disciples right now in faithlessness? I was talking to my counselor about there's something about just freedom that just doesn't feel free. It actually feels like you're being irresponsible. And I mentioned that same to her, same thing to her about just my boat being rocked. And she was like, not sure if you're even on the boat with Jesus. Pretty sure you're out there somewhere trying to figure out how to swim on your own, and Jesus is inviting you into the boat. And I'm like, you tried it, okay? She came for my life, but it was true. She's like, you're out there trying to swim against the waves. Jesus is on the boat where there is safety, inviting you in. Doesn't mean that the waves are going to stop. Doesn't mean that the storms are going to subside right now, but there's safety on the boat with Jesus. And you keep saying oh, well, I'm going to try to swim this way, or I'm going to try to swim this way instead. So that's a good question to ask. How am I, fighting the waves? Am I even on the boat? And if I am on the boat with Jesus, am I this person that still, has that angst? So that's pretty cool. I can look at that passage and truly be able to see how wow, okay, I'm responding just like these disciples, and just just being really, really weary and really frightened when Jesus is right here, and he's just settled and calm because he knows God causes all things to work together for the good. That's a promise. And so if I were doing my quiet time right now, I would take some time to just journal through everything that I'm feeling and thinking about that passage, what God is exposing in my heart. And I would probably journal some prayers around, okay, God, help me to have the heart of Jesus where I can just sleep on the boat. Okay. So that's where I would probably go from there. And then I have another passage in mind, and I'm not sure where it's at, but it's about Peter walking on water. And the reason that, and so this is truly how my quiet time would go. Sometimes they're like passages that I think would be helpful, but I don't know where they are, so I Google about it. But there's been a lot of ways that I've been able to relate to Peter's character, and so that's why he's somebody who comes to mind for me. And so this is Matthew. One of the searches that came up was Matthew 14:29. So I'm going to go to Matthew 14:29 and see if that is the passage that I'm thinking about. Looks like it is. So title of the passage is Jesus Walks on Water. I will start reading in verse 22. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat, there we go again, and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. So we see this theme again. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Two separate events, right? And so think about that as like, things happen in life. You may have had one situation where you were on the boat and you were really afraid and Jesus was right there on the boat. You may have another situation where you're in the boat and Jesus ain't in the boat. Jesus comes walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified in their fear. They cried out, "It's a ghost." Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" That is convicting. When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. So Peter, my boy Peter, and I'm a lot like Peter. He's bold, he's courageous, until his faith is tested. And it's so bad, because that's exactly how he was with Jesus going to the cross. He was bold and courageous and saying, "I'll never deny you, Lord, not I." And then he denies him 3 times. Like when his faith is put to the test, he's like, "I'm actually not about that life that I spoke so highly about." I can relate, like being put to the test and just like, on second thought, well, okay. And so Peter asks Jesus, he's bold enough to say like, "Hey, I want to do bold things. Tell me to come out on the water." Okay. You want to do bold things. You want to be a powerhouse for God. You want to see God move in miraculous ways. You pray strong, faithful, bold prayers. Sure. Come out on the water, Jesus invites him out on the water and he's fine. He's fine until it says he saw the strong winds and the waves. So here we are again, okay? How is our perspective of Jesus' capability changing based on our circumstance? So it's all good when we're calm at sea. Clearly, Jesus is capable. But when we're not calm at sea and the waves are crashing against the boat, all of a sudden, Jesus ain't capable no more. What that looks like in everybody's situation is going to be completely different. What it looks like for Jesus to be capable in your situation is completely different. Like for some, it may be that like you think you've failed too hard for him to be able to pull you back into his saving grace. you don't think he's capable, or you think that the thing that you need or the thing that you're praying for is too big and the situation will never change. You don't think he's capable. It can go to both ends of the spectrum. It's whatever God that you need him to be right now. That's the God that he's capable of being. And for whatever reason, it seems like he's not, right? Our problems are too big for the creator of the world. Got it. What I think that we've got to do actually is just like figure out what it looks like to surrender to whatever the plan is, because the plan just may not look like what you want it to look like. You may not get to where you're trying to go along the path that you would prefer. Definitely may not be the path of least resistance, but that don't mean that God is incapable because it don't happen the way that you think that it should. It just means that it didn't happen in the way that you think that it should. Hear me out. Talking to me right here. Not even talking to you, talking to me. But I know that those things can be applicable. And so just two really good passages to look at when you're in storms in your life to really help you to go back and see how disciples were faithless, in these situations, and what kind of faithful attitude that Jesus was calling them to. And in both scenarios, Jesus took care of it, after their faithlessness was exposed. He was still there to handle the situation like he always would, but they were put to the test. How are you handling your test? Okay. I'm out. All right. I'm out. That's all I got. Per usual, like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that good stuff. Like I always say, I always love hearing from you guys about ways that you feel impacted by the videos and ways that you may be able to relate. Hit me up, and until next time, I'm out. Bye, y'all.